Welcome back. This is Teresa Adams with the Community College of Denver. Today what we're going to talk about is the definition of the trigonometric functions in terms of x, y, and r. So we're going to look at some point x, y other than at the origin, and the terminal side of the angle alpha is on the point x, y. We're in standard position. That means our initial side is on the positive x-axis, and we define r as the square root of x squared plus y squared. And the reason that we do this, if I draw a quick little triangle right here, here is y, here is x. Using Pythagoras' theorem, we got the hypotenuse is r. That's why r equals the square root of x squared plus y squared. So the way in which we're going to define our sine, cosine, tangent of the angles alpha is in terms of x, y, and r. So we're going to say the sine of alpha is equal to y over r. The cosine of alpha is equal to x over r. And the tangent of alpha is equal to y over x. Now when we talk about sine, cosine, and tangent, we need to also talk about their cofunctions. So the cofunction for sine is the cosecant of alpha, and it's going to be defined as r over y. The cofunction of cosine is the secant of alpha is equal to r over x. And lastly, the cofunction of tangent is the cotangent of alpha, which is equal to x over y. Now, we also have to say provided no denominator is 0, because if it is, it's undefined, and that's not interesting. If you take a look up here at sine and cosecant, now notice how the sine of alpha is y over r and the cosecant is r over y. The y over r and r over y are reciprocals of each other. So we say sine and cosecant are not only the functions, but they're reciprocals of each other. Cosine and secant, tangent and cotangent. So let's see how we can define these in terms of their reciprocals. So the sine of alpha is 1 over the cosecant of alpha. Similarly, if I want to find the cosecant of alpha, this is equal to 1 over the sine of alpha. The cosine of alpha is 1 over the secant of alpha, and the secant of alpha is equal to 1 over the cosine of alpha. Lastly, we have the tangent of alpha is 1 over the cotangent of alpha, or similarly, the cotangent of alpha is equal to 1 over the tangent of alpha. Now, these right here are terribly important, this here, because if we are asked to find the cosecant of an angle, we're asked to find the secant of an angle, or we're asked to find the cotangent of an angle, we don't have those in our calculators. So what we do is we find the sine of the angle, and then we use our reciprocal function button on our calculator. You might have a calculator button that says something that looks like this, x to the negative 1. That's what I have. So I would do the sine of my angle, I would hit this button, and then that would give me the answer for the cosecant of alpha. Okay, so if we want to find the exact values for all trig functions for alpha, where alpha is in standard position, that means our initial position is at the positive x-axis, and the angles and terminal side contains this point, the first thing we want to do is figure out where this point is. So the negative 2 is down in this quadrant. Here's my angle alpha. And my point negative 2 is down there. That means down in that quadrant, the only thing that should come up positive is our tangent and cotangent. So and we can do those right away. The tangent and cotangent, we can do those first. So tangent of alpha is equal to our y over x, so negative 2 over negative 2. So in other words, this is 1. And the cotangent of alpha is a reciprocal of 1, which is just 1. We like those because there's no work to be done. So the other ones, the sine, the cosine, they're little cofunctions, or their buddies as I call them, we need r. So that's what we're going to do now, is we're going to find r. So r is equal to the square root of negative 2 squared plus negative 2 squared. So this is going to equal to the square root of 4 plus 4, square root of 8, which is in other words 2 square root of 2. So our sine of alpha is going to be negative 2, that's my y, over 2 square root of 2. So in other words, because the 2's will cancel, it'll be negative 1 over the square root of 2. Its cofunction, or the reciprocal function, is the the cosecant. Let me erase that. Cosecant. The cosecant of alpha, which is going to be equal to negative square root of 2, because that's a reciprocal of the sine function. Let's do cosine. It's our last one. So our cosine alpha is equal to negative 2, that's our y value, over our radius, square root of 2, 2 to the square root of 2. Our 2's cancel, and it is negative 1 over the square root of 2. Its cofunction is the secant alpha, which is going to be negative square root of 2, because that's the reciprocal. So here's our answer, because it's asking for all of them. Our answers are this. Here's our sine and its cofunction. Here's our cosine and its cofunction. Here's our tangent and its cofunction. Let's go ahead and do one more. So we have 12, 5. So let's draw where that is so we know what's positive. We have 12, 5. That's about right there. Here's our angle alpha. We're in quadrant number 1, which means everything is positive. Let's go ahead and do our tangent and cotangent, because we don't have to find r. Those are straightforward. So the tangent of alpha is our y, which is 5, over our x, which is 12. And our cotangent alpha is a reciprocal of that, so that's going to be 12 over 5. We do need the radius, so let's find our radius next. The radius is the square root of 12 squared plus 5 squared, which is equal to the square root of 144 plus 25. In other words, this is 13. So our sine of alpha is going to be 5 over 13. The reciprocal is the cosecant of alpha, which is going to be 13 over 5. The cosine of alpha is going to be the y, the x, which is 12 over r. And the secant is going to be the reciprocal. There's my alpha, don't forget that. Terribly important to make sure you put your alphas in there. So we have the secant of alpha is equal to the 13 over 12. So here's all my answers for this one. Here's my sine and its cofunction, the cosine, its cofunction, the tangent, and its cofunction. So the last two I'm going to give to you. I am going to tell you which quadrants they are, and I will give you the radius. So let me go back to my black pen. This is in, oh, what happened there? This is in quadrant number 4. Here's my alpha. It's positive 3, negative 4, so we're in quadrant number 4. So what's going to be positive there is just the cosine and its reciprocal secant. Everything else should come up as negative answers. The radius on this one should be 5. Let's take a look at the last one. We took a look at the last one. It's negative 6, 4. This is in quadrant number 2, which means that in quadrant number 2, let me put my alphas on there. Quadrant number 2, the only thing that's going to be positive is sine and its cofunction cosecant. The radius on this one will be the square root of 13. And if you have any questions on finding all 6 of the trigonometric functions, we'll go over that in class. Thank you.